Welcome in, College Baseball Central fans. We are once again joined by the great Jay Johnson, head coach of the LSU Tigers. He's here to give us a little preview of fall baseball. Coach, how you doing?
Great, Alex. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. You've it's been a long off season. I mean, it's still technically the off season, but you guys are ramping up there. Um, I feel like it's kind of deja vu, to last season where I'm coming in here and we're talking about how you've lost all this talent, you've lost all this leadership, but you've brought in just a star-studded recruiting class and transfer portal class. What does it take, during the offseason and during the season, maybe to keep that up and to maintain that level of talent on the roster?
Yeah, I think it's been a lot the last couple years. I mean, when you just look at it, we set a SEC record in 2023, having 13 players drafted. I believe we had 9 players drafted last year, and 8 of those were pitchers. And I believe that was also an SEC record. And then we've had a couple more guys sign, free agent contracts as well. So I think, the total number is like 22 professional players, have left the roster from the 2023 national championship team, which in my opinion is one of the best teams in the history of college baseball. And then last year, a few of the guys that replaced some of those guys also, moved on to professional baseball. And I think that's just the era that we're in now with the transfer portal and those types of things. But we're excited about the group that we brought in, really excited about fall baseball. There's a lot of intrigue, with our team. There's a lot of whatever you want to call them, jobs to be won, at least initial roles, to be set. And from the coach's chair, we got to start getting better. And the only way to do that is to get on the field. So really excited for our 45-day window coming up.
Yeah, what has been some of the things that have impressed you about the team so far as you work up to starting that 45-day window?
Yeah, good work ethic. We're in our 8-hour weeks, which is strength and conditioning and, skill instruction, and the aptitude of kind of moving along in our development process has been really good. Whether that's been, with the pitchers and building them up and their bullpens that they're throwing with Coach Yeski right now, and Jamie Tutko, our director of analytics. That's been good. On the hitting side of it, like I said, a lot of competitions. There's a lot of competition. There's not a lot of jobs that are going to be handed out to anybody this year, and I'm excited about that. And I think their attention to what we're doing and in this phase has been really good, and I'm excited to see them in some game environments.
Yeah, I mean, you got guys like Bear Jones, Michael Braswell, Josh Pearson coming back, and those guys kind of seem like they're going to be, from the outside, like they would be kind of the leaders in the clubhouse. Is that how you've seen it, or have you seen some other guys maybe step up?
Yeah, I think I talked about this a little bit before. Is there was an exceptional, player leadership in 2023. It wasn't just Dylan Cruz, Paul Skeens, the best players in the world, but they were phenomenal leaders. And then Cade Beloso, Gavin Dugas. I mean, those guys are special human beings. They were in their 5th year. LSU meant a lot. That was a lot to have, walk out the door at one time, not just from a talent standpoint, but from a leadership standpoint. Last year, we had some guys that were really trying to find their way in that regard. But, we do have 8 players that, were here when we won the national championship in 2023 that have kind of seen both sides of it. And they're trying to do a really, really good job. I think leading by example is something that is not even really a thing, because to me, leading by example is just doing what you're supposed to do. And so we want to have everybody in the program, leading by example. But it doesn't matter if a player's been here 1 year or 3 years or 4 years. We need some guys to emerge on the leadership front from a peer group or player standpoint. And I'm confident that we have some guys well positioned to do that. And, we'll see how that evolves. And again, like we're just in the initial phase of this thing, we start fall practice probably later than any team in the country, just by design. I have a reason that I do that, and excited to get on the field and let some of that start to emerge more.
So it seems like two position groups in particular, really took a hit, coming out of last year. The pitchers, you mentioned all those pitchers getting drafted, in particular left-handed pitching. And then, your catchers, you lost all the catchers from the roster from last year. How do you feel like you've replaced those positions?
Yeah, I think first off, it's always a double-edged sword, because you're certainly, one of the main reasons we're here is to help players get to professional baseball and be successful in professional baseball. And we obviously have a outstanding track record of that right now. But then you're immediately thinking like, okay, now what with next year's team? I think a couple things on the high school front, we were really fortunate to get some guys through the draft. On the catching side, Kate Arambidi. On the pitching side, obviously William Schmidt, Cooper Williams, Maverick Rizzi, Kason Evans. So there's 4 really good freshman pitchers, that have come into the program, and a really good freshman catcher. On the transfer side of things, knowing that we were going to have to improve the catching situation coming into this year, we had a junior college transfer in Blaze Priester, who did a really good job at Meridian Community College. And then, we have 2 players that were very good hitters for their teams that were kind of, backup catchers. But it was kind of because of their offensive importance to their teams. And Luis Hernandez from Indiana State and Eddie Yaman from Dayton. I anticipate all 4 of those guys getting a chance to play. We're going to evaluate them closely, in all phases during the fall, and kind of see how that shakes out. All of them have power potential and hitting ability where they should be able to make a contribution regardless of where the bulk of the innings go from a catching standpoint. On the pitching side of things, we had to hustle, and it became pretty clear, as the draft was going along, that, a lot of guys were going to be moving out. Or as last year's season, we led the country in strikeouts last year. I thought Coach Yeski did a really good job with our pitching staff. But when you're replacing Luke Holman, Gage Jump, I thought those were 2 of the better guys in the league. We need some emergence, and we needed to recruit. So I think we got 6 pitchers from the transfer portal, which is a necessity, when you have 17 or 18 pitchers signed pro contracts over the last 2 years. And then, like I said, getting those 4 freshmen in there, I think there's good talent. People just don't maybe know their names, quite as well yet. But you're looking at guys that performed at other schools at a really, really high level. We have some good returners, with Gavin Guidry and Cade Anderson. And then, the opportunity to get Chase Shores and Jaden Newt back healthy. And both those guys were probably the best pitchers that we had in the 2022 recruiting class. And we're obviously limited by injuries in that first year and essentially missed last year.
Yeah, I put out some feelers to some fans, for questions to ask you on this one. And one player in particular they wanted to know about was, John Pearson, coming in the freshman class, coming out of North Louisiana. It's a guy that, Josh Pearson's little brother, although little is maybe not the way to describe it since he's pretty big. Do you see him being able to maybe find a role maybe in the outfield somewhere?
I think he's going to be a really good player here. I really do. And we're trying to play him at third base. And so far, really high marks on both sides of the ball. Obviously comes from a great baseball background, as we know, and just great character background, as we know. Love his parents, obviously getting to know them, having Josh for 3 years, and going to be a staple player. And I'm really excited about the freshman class that we brought in. It's not big. It's 10 players, but they're all, in my opinion, really good foundational pieces, that will be here for 2 and 3 years. And John has certainly stood out as a linchpin of those guys. And like I said, he's kind of in this competitive element of like, nobody has a name in the starting lineup at this point in time. And I'm anxious to get to fall baseball and get to see where guys fit, what their strengths are, and how we can utilize them for this year. But, he's a guy I'm really excited about to have here for the next 3 years.
You mentioned you were trying him at third base. In third base, obviously there's a big Tommy White sized hole there, both in the lineup and defensively at third base. You mentioned, so John, maybe one guy you got there. Who are some other guys you think have their eye on that spot?
Yeah, I think we have 7 infielders, and when I say infielders, second base, shortstop, third base, and again, it's wide open. Obviously, really liked what Stephen Milam did last year, and especially at the end of the season. I really thought he grew exponentially from the time he got here through the fall, preseason, early conference play to the postseason, and did a really nice job. I think what he brings to the table is he can play all 3 spots. Michael Braswell, much like Steven, finished the year very strong last year. I think when you put his numbers up offensively against the other shortstops in the league, they were probably pretty solid at the end of the day, especially in league play. So we'll move him around at all 3 spots as well. We're excited about a couple of the incoming guys that we have on the transfer side of things. Daniel Dickinson from Utah Valley's had a great 2 years there. Just like the other 2 guys, he can play all 3 spots, has played all 3 spots in college. Tanner Reeves is a really, really good player as well from Blinn Junior College. He was potentially going to come last year. He decided to go back to his junior college. So I feel like he's been committed here forever. So we're excited to have Tanner. And he's a really good athlete, so he could play in the outfield as well. And then 2 really good freshmen so far. I mean, Michael Ryan from Rummel has a ton of talent. And as I was kind of mentioning with John Pearson, a guy that we're really excited to build, the next 3 years around, and I think he has the ability to play shortstop, has a lot of uncoachable traits. I think he just needs to play more baseball. And he's obviously going to get the opportunity, to do that here, for the fall and into the season and into summer ball and hopefully be a great player here. And then David Hogg, a player from Texas, who's a great athlete, was an excellent football player. He's the 2 things that have stood out about him so far are athleticism and competitiveness. We're doing a lot of competitive things, in our skill instruction, and he finds his way to usually be in the mix in those things. So I feel very good. There was a point, where we weren't sure where we would be with infield depth, and I really don't think we could be in a better spot as I sit here today, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I know. Getting Jared Jones and Michael Braswell through the draft and getting them back on camp, was a big boon for you guys. Looking at the outfield, looks like, Ashton Larson, man, he had a great summer up at the Cape, really performed well and really, had some up and down times last year, but it seems like he's going to kind of be a staple in the outfield. How do you feel like his development has progressed?
Yeah, I think he's been great. Really enjoy coaching Ashton. He has a undying commitment to be as good as he possibly can be as a baseball player. Would not surprise me at all if he's a major league player someday, just because he's one of those guys that really builds his whole life around his craft and is incredibly committed and has hitting ability. And I think he showed that. He did a great job coming in here last year and, kind of like Steven, as I mentioned, worked through some bumps in fall practice and the transition to this level, which is very natural, especially when you have a pitching staff as good as we had last year. But kind of came through that, was a pinch hitter, spot player earlier in the season, but just showed a maturity, a consistency, and a ability to get the job done, which, led to him being an everyday player. And I think he's a good lesson for, young players, coming into our program of just, keep working hard, be focused, when your opportunities are given to you, just, put a good effort forth and execute. And that's what he did. So I have a lot of faith in him. And he certainly, as you said, had a really good summer as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of newcomers coming in that are going to be battling for those outfield spots. I mean, Chris Stanfield coming in from Auburn, who was, had some really good moments at Auburn. Maybe struggled a little with the bat, but certainly he's one of the fastest players in the SEC. and really good defensively. And then you've got, Derek Curiel coming in from high school. You still got Ethan Fry and, some others, on the roster. How do you feel like your depth has really played out in the outfield?
Yeah, I feel good about it. And, I won't even begin to say who's going to go where right now. And these guys all know it. And I'm excited about it. And when I look at that listing of players that you just laid out, you mentioned it with Ashton. Jake Brown got a lot of playing time, last year as a freshman. Josh Pearson has been here for 3 years and has had a lot of playing time. Chris Stanfield has 2 full years of playing. Derek Curiel, really talented player to get to campus, and he's off to a great start here. And you can just kind of see it in the skill instruction work of what he brings to the table. Ethan Fry really had to work through an injury last year, but a player I have a lot of faith in. So I'm comfortable, honestly, with trying to win a game with any of those guys that you mentioned. And so we'll have a very deliberate way about how we're going to kind of evaluate them. I do think all of them can and will help us at some point, this season. And, the fact that we're going to have a few of those guys for a couple more years, or maybe even a few more years, is really exciting as well.
Yeah, when you're looking at your fall practice schedule, you got that exhibition game against Samford in Biloxi. How did that all come about?
Yeah, the Shuckers have been great. Like, actually, in 2023, we were supposed to play a 2-game series against Florida State over there, like on a Tuesday, Wednesday, which I was really excited about. It's like one power program I've never played, and then they had a coaching change and didn't want to do it, which I understand how that goes and works, and not a problem. But we haven't been able to kind of work it out to get back over there. Traveling a couple hours in the middle of an SEC schedule for a Tuesday is not something that we're probably going to do a whole lot. But Hunter Reed with the Shuckers is a great guy, and was really able to help me pair this, together. And Coach David at Samford, and I really respect their program. That we're in the NCAA tournament a couple years ago, and we played them, and know that they do a lot of things right, and thought it would be a good opportunity. And we have a pretty good LSU following over there. So we're actually going to go over and scrimmage in the ballpark, just inter-squad ourselves on Saturday, and then stay the night and play Samford on Sunday. So I'm really looking forward to that trip. We only have 12 players that played at all for us last year. So there's a lot of new pieces. Just as we were talking through some of those names, you can see, the connecting of the team is really important. And so I'm really looking forward to that trip over to Biloxi.
And then you're going to be making a trip over to Lafayette, just that short little hop over there to go, play the Cajuns. You guys hosted them last year in an exhibition, and now you're going over there. What went into that decision to, do something in Lafayette as opposed to doing it at Alex Box?
Well, there's a couple things. Number one, we have a little bit of renovations going on here in the ballpark, and we'll be fine to scrimmage here, and we're not really going to be disrupted a ton. But I wanted them to have everything done before we bring another team in here to play, relative to bullpens and all those kinds of things, as we're making some adjustments there. And then Coach Deggs and I, a lot of history, as friends and playing against each other several times in the NCAA tournament. And on more than anything, I really respect their program, and I respect the style and brand of baseball that they play, where they're going to throw everything at you. And I think it has an opportunity to expose a lot of things to our players that we need to improve on and work on. And I've found it very beneficial the first 3 years of playing them in November and the fall. And I added a little extra challenge to it. It's going to be the morning after the Alabama football game. So, our players will have to make sure they get some rest that night.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there was a famous story going around that after the Alabama game, the big Alabama win a couple of years ago in football, that Paul Skeens left that game at halftime so he could go home and get some sleep.
Yeah, and then he struck out 9 in a row, and I'll be the one to say that's the day that, like, everybody knew, like, okay, this is different. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's Paul. Hopefully we get some guys that like how his career's gone and will make similar decisions. But yeah, we're excited. We're excited for the fall, and we'll have a couple other good series between ourselves, the purple and gold, and on a kind of an assistant coach World Series. Going to try to facilitate a lot of competition, and and really use this to prepare us for another good tough schedule ahead in the SEC.
Yeah, just one quick question about the schedule. You take your annual preseason trip to Texas. This time you're going to be up in the Dallas area, as you were in the Austin area and the Houston area. Now you're in the, how important is that initial preseason, or not really preseason, but pre-conference road trip, and why is it always to Texas?
Yeah, I think first off, in the immediate impact on our team, you're looking at a couple things. You're looking at RPI, and so getting to play, Dallas Baptist, who's a perennial 40-win team, Nebraska NCAA tournament team last year, Kansas State NCAA tournament team last year, Sam Houston State perennial top of their conference. So there's RPI value. Then there's a help getting you prepared for SEC play element. So those things factor in, are probably the most important. Then secondly is recruiting. I've mentioned this before. Like, I think for us to be a perennial national championship contender, we have to recruit well in Texas. And, I think it's really paid off. I think we have 8 players on our team from Texas this year, which is the most, since I've been here. Several really good freshmen. I mentioned Kason Evans and Cooper Williams and Kate Arambidi and David Hogg, and then a few transfers as well. So there's a competitive element, there's an RPI element, there's a recruiting element. And, we'll I think we got one more year in there somewhere next year. And then, we may do something different, but always excited to be in there and play.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, I appreciate your time. You are gracious with it as always, and good luck to you this fall. And I'll come say hey when I come down there to watch some of those scrimmages.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex.